up by digging in the ditches to pay his taxes. He has to work for 3 days with a shovel, or if he has a horse, he can use a team of horses. He can pay his taxes by doing 1 day's work. And in this episode, which is called "Taking One Thing with Another," the settler tells about trading with a neighbor any article without using money. They used to call that mooter. They used to barter with each other for things because they didn't have any money and they needed to trade to get the use of something they needed when the other fellow probably didn't want that. And as money was pretty scarce and they couldn't get any credit, well, they could get credit at the Hudson Bay store if they took furs there, of course, but they didn't have some of the things they wanted, they didn't have them at that store. So they traded with one another. But he had other things to do, so he couldn't go digging his snake root that he wanted to go and dig. He had to put in these 3 days of work. His wife advised him before to not worry about digging snake root until the flowers come out of it. Then they could see it growing up better, and it's pretty hard to find without a blossom or something to detect it. And then when he gets to the place where he's going to dig, he walked up there and he met some men there working already to do their work, and he talks about being able to count a little bit because an old man taught him when he was a young boy. An old man, a neighbor of his, that knew how to do that, and he taught him how to count. And he talks of the lack of schooling and how this man lived with a squaw. He was what they call a squaw man. And there was one more man who could teach. And he mentions him taking up his boy to the convent in St. Boniface for them to teach him up there. And he arrives at the place he was to dig, and he meets men from other parts working there. And they talk while digging of various things, such as digging up graves and finding people turned over in their coffins. That was up at the old St. Andrew's Church. And about an old miller who wandered away to die. Then the conversation switches to a wedding coming up. So he plans to take his wife by boat up the river to visit their youngest daughter to near where this wedding was going to be, because it eventually would be in her house, because they owned a big house, and the other person whose daughter was getting married, their house was too small to dance in, so they boarded their daughter's house. And he heard all about this from a man that worked there, that came up from near where his daughter lived, a man that talked about her husband, the daughter's husband, running the ferry. And just now it was pulled out of the water because it had a leak in it, and they had to fix it. And the day he arrives up for the wedding, the man is just coming back from fixing the ferry after putting it back in the water. And he sends a message to another neighbor to see if he can borrow a boat to go up the river with. And he comes home and he tells his wife that he's been able to get a boat and they should go. So his wife is doing some cooking to take up to the wedding. And when he comes to the house, the supper's a little bit late. He finds it too hot in the house for him to stay in there, and he wants to go out and do his chores. And he finally gets out and does them before it gets too dark, but his wife wants him to look at her new dress she has made from the cloth he brought home from the fort, that gingham and that calico and stuff. And he advised her to make it longer, to have the collar stand up a little bit higher. And then when he gets a chance, he says, "I'm going to go to bed now and get an early start." He wanted to get an early start in the morning, you see, that's the way to do. And in the morning he goes and makes arrangements on his way to work. He made arrangements with one of his neighbors to do their chores for him and go home, and he advised him about the best way to get over the chores was the way he did it. And he explained quite a bit of it to his neighbor, especially that spotted calf that he had to feed special way. Taking one thing with another, like. Taking one thing with another, like, it's not a bad way to pay up your taxes, I was thinking. A fella has time in his hands, he wants to get off at times, and never has money in his pocket sometimes to pay up with. So time is the same as money around here. And when people want something and he's not got it, all he's got to do is to look around and mooter with somebody for what he wants in his place. And then you give him some of your stuff if he wants it. Then you don't have to dig down in your pants' pocket for money you're not got anyhow. This way it's easy on you, and sleep comes better. You don't have to do no worrying if you're not going to get any money or not. A fellow never sees much of this coins around. They send over from the old country anyhow. I guess because it's so heavy to carry around, I guess. Some I see already were shiny, and some of them was worn right down smooth like, and you could hardly see the Queen's mother's face anymore on them. And one I see was older again even. It had on a man's head on. Folks said when they seen it, it was their father. I don't know about that. It might have been. And the next time I get any of that money will be when I can sell a cow after I get enough of them. I can let one of them go. This is the reason I want to dig snake root to take up. I can get stuff for that less they give me casters if you want it. That's what the Indians does, same as the fur they takes up to the fort and cast them in. When they buys anything, they hand over the sticks they got, and all at once like. And then when they get back some sticks in change, they buy some more stuff until all the casters are gone, what they had. Lots of other people does that too. It saves a lot of bother counting when most of them can't count anyhow, because nobody never teached them how to count while they was young. But me, I can count a little. I learned it, how to do it, from an old fellow once. He used to stay not far from where I stayed when I was a boy in my father's house yet. And this old fella was one of these that come over here from a place across the ocean away there, where they teach lots of things to people. He was what the Indians call a munias, because he lived with a squaw. And he knowed lots of things besides counting, but. And he had a box full of these fancy clothes with him. He never weared none of them, although, anymore. Now he got old, he had the same clothes on all the time, winter and summer. It's no never mind to him. Only thing in the winter, he put on a scarf around his neck, over his sheepskin coat, 3 times around, and keep the scarf on his hat on all the time, even in the house, mind you. So he did. And his squaw called him her munias, and she worked for him, even though they didn't have no ring on her finger. And she could slip around in her soft shoes and never make a sound. And she was always there when he wanted her. And when he wanted a fire in a box stove, he told her to go out and get a stick and poke the end into the open door in the stove. Then keep poking it in and let the end of it burn off like, and sometimes the stick would be sticking through the door leading into the house. It was that long. Then they would both sit there and watch until the stick burned off. Then they could shut the door again, like. And they had other on their clothes on, but their cats was sitting shivering around, crying to get warm. They always kept about 10 of them in there. And one of them froze his tail and was dragging the dried up part along the ground, so the old man holds the cat up by the neck and whacks off his tail with a big knife. He always was saying the cat never seemed to mind what he did to him. And out in the stable he kept 2 cows. He never bothered to clean them out either, although, so as when spring come, their backs was touching the roof. All you had to do then was to take down the barn a log at a time, then put it together again on a new place, and plaster it up between the logs with cow pies, fresh ones like, not like the dry ones that makes good smudges. And then the stable was all ready for the coming winter. He had all summer to do it in, anyhow, because people milk their cows out in the yard when it's warm. You don't need to put them in the stable. I only knowed him a little while afore he died, and he only had time to show me how to put down my name on paper and to do the counting I was telling you about. Now, it's a good thing for me I knowed him that long, 'cause nobody never knowed nothing around these parts like to tell anybody how to learn to count. Only one I heard about, and he lived away up the river, the other way, past where the other fort is, away south that way. A fella come up here one time, and he was the one what told me about him. He learned these things when he was a soldier in the old country where he come from. And this fella says they had one boy. His missus wanted this boy to learn things, same as his mother knowed. So she told him to take their boy to the place where these sisters live. It's like one big family. They have a mother, and all the rest of them are sisters belonging to the mother, I suppose. And anyhow, they teach things to kids. So she went and took her boy to them, and he couldn't say very much about who he was nor nothing. So she writ his name on some paper and give him that, and sent him over there with the father. Now his father met a friend on the way over, and he walked with him up to the door, and he knocked on it. And one of these sisters comes to the door, so the boy's father says, "Good day, I'm Major Cornelius Thompson Jones, KSB," and a bunch of other letters. And the fella with him says, "Well, I'm just Briggs." He didn't have no handle on his name. The father says. And I was saying, "I'm bringing my boy to leave him here, and you can learn him anything you mind to," he says. "I'll pick him up in 6 months' time." So one of these sisters, he took the boy inside and asked him his name. "Name in pocket," he says. And she thinks this was so good, the news come out. And that's the way he heard it, he says. I've been wondering ever since if she could get him to learn much. And I hope sometime somebody comes up our way with their books and tell Angelica's kids what to do. I had been walking now for quite a spell when I was thinking about these things already. And up ahead now I could see other fellas working, same places I was supposed to work. Quite a bunch of them. Looks like they must be got there early, less'n they was there yesterday already, and never went home in the night. And some of them on their jobs can stay away without having anything to do at home, 'cause there's somebody stays back and does the chores for them. And me, I can't leave the missus alone to do all the work. It's too much for her to tackle all alone that way. So when I come up to them, one of them, he showed me the place where I could dig. And I went there and I digged for a spell, and then I went to the barrel to get a drink. It was only water, although somebody fetched the barrel down to do us while we were working, with a dipper hanging on it yet. The water wasn't good enough for some of them, and some of them come from away south that way, and they lived where the liquor was they could get. And they could get it any time from one of them halfway houses near the creek where John Tate runs his mill. A fellow working next to me told me that. He says there's 2 more places this side of that one that you can get whiskey at. It's pretty cheap anyhow, he says. About 2 shillings a bottle. Well, somebody may as well as drink it after the trouble it takes to get it here on the big boats, he says. They say the older it gets, the better it gets. And it's a long time from where they make it till it gets into somebody's wagon to take it home. If you get enough at once, you don't have to be running to get some more every now and again. And it gets a little older again down in your root cellar that way, he says. You could get it up at the fort any time in gallon jugs if you wanted, his father told him. That was up at the fort where I took my hood yesterday. And when his father was there, they were having a kind of a powwow over changing the feller what runs the place or something. And some of them neighbors joined in. And on their way back home, 3 of them was walking along together all carrying a jug each. There was one of them, only a boy he was, his father, get him to come there for some oil, you'll see. Well, on their way back, now, one of them was drying up, and he stopped for a drink. Tipping the jug on his shoulder to pour it down, the jugs are been getting mixed, and he took a big swig of the lamp oil. And after he gets done spluttering it out of him, he went straight home. The shock of it, give him from drinking that stuff, come nigh on putting him sober for the rest of his days, this fellow was saying. Anyhow, he never drink in the dark no more, he says. And something else again, his father told him about two other fellas coming in along in a wagon again. They were near the fort, and this was along the bank of the river where it's steep like. And when all at once they gets too close, and the bank and the wagon and the team, it went down the bank, killing one of them. There was both 3 sheets in the wind and singing away when they went over. The people on the opposite bank was saying. Anyhow, these people, they come over in a boat, but they was too late to save on under the wagon. They was sure they heard 2 of them, but only one was there when they gets there. That's the dead one, like. The other one must have beat it, like, his father was saying. Now this ditch where we're all digging at is supposed to run water out of a low places around, so as the animals and people driving across won't get bogged down. And it's a pretty long, and it's a kind of crooked. A few people that doesn't have no grant land or strip lot either to pay taxes on, they pay them a few shillings for digging if they can't get enough other help to come and do it. Some of the ones that come from the south that way was talking about digging, and they done a lot of it already, they were saying, up at the stone church where they bury people what died. And they had to move some of them graves that was in the wrong place and put them all over again in a different place again. And one of them fellas digging, he heard someone yelling. He thought he heard it, they were saying. So he jumps up out of the hole, they told me, and he couldn't hear no sound up there. And when he went back down the hole, he heard it again alone. But by this time he was at the box lid. So he opened the lid, and he sees the corpse was laying on its face. Well, the sight of it put old Corrigal out of his mind for a spell, they were saying. She must have been sleeping in a trance. Now, when they put her there, they were saying. Must have been, I says, for sure. Well, what could she do? She had to smother that way, they were saying. There was one more old fellow what went out of his mind on, and one of them says, the old man what runs the mill it was. He wandered off, and he never come back. And somebody went to the mill, and they missed him, so they told around that he wasn't there. So one of them, Curry Irvin it was, he went on saddle, and he looked up and down till he found him, lying in the grass, out back by the public road that way. Was he dead, I says. Well, I should say so. He was dead, he says. And after talking like this, nobody never say nothing more about digging up people, nor nothing. And I was thinking, the next time they want me to dig for my taxes, I'd like to do it making a road near where my house is, where I wouldn't hear no more about people turning over in their grave. After we eat lunch, I was sitting along a dark fellow named Frank White from up the river, the opposite way from where my place is. And he says to me, maybe I see you someplace afore, he says. Where I stay is by a ferry up south, up there, and sometimes I run the ferry over the river with people, and sometimes with animals and carts and stuff like that. I know about that, I told him. My daughter lives close there, and her man takes the ferry across now and again. To spell you off, like, I suppose. Well, if you've been up there to visit then, that's where I seen you, he says. We had two daughters, me and the missus, and that one is the one we had first. So she is the oldest one of the two, like. And after he found out that now, he was telling me about Cubby Sinclair's girl was getting married. And in 4 days' time it was. Her mother asked if they could put on a suite in my daughter's man's house after the wedding was over. Their room is bigger than what Sinclair's room is, he says, and this is the reason they want to have it over there. You got to have a pretty good floor to stand it when they gets it going, he says, and the planking is thick enough to stand the bouncing in Miller's house. I don't think my daughter will mind that, I says. She's pretty good at helping people out. That's what me and the missus, we teached her how to do it. When she was a little girl, I told him. He said he was going back in 1 day's time, so I told him, take a message to my daughter Victoria and tell her me and the missus will be coming up for the wedding and visit the same time. Tell her we expect to get somebody to do our chores for us. I'm sure of that, I told him. So he said he would take my message along and give it to my daughter right straight to her, so no mistake can't be made. Sounds like I can trust you pretty good, I told him. So I thanked him 2 or 3 times. I'll be going up tomorrow, he says, and after I done my day's work, 'cause my 2 days will be up, 'cause I come a day afore you, like, he says. I might see you then, I told him. If we don't get in time for the wedding, me and the missus will be at my daughter's place when the dancing starts up. I'll get a chance to kiss the new bride over there. As soon as we are done talking, the boss says, so start digging again. And so we digged up to lunchtime without saying very much. The missus, he packed enough grub for me, so I had some left over, so I give it to Frank White some, 'cause he was going to be sore if he had to eat again tomorrow. By, he says, whoever made this bannock has got a sure touch for making it the right way. Of course, I'm only saying that outside my house, he says, 'cause if I was in my house, I dasn't say it, so as my missus could hear me. He's the one what's talking, that I was talking to afore, and his woman's a big one, he says. She can take a calf by the tail and heave it clear out of the barn door if it wants to go the wrong way. And she can do that with one arm, just as if it was a small little cat or something. Her name is Lottie, and I was thinking, well, there must be a lot of her, if that's what she could do. I never said nothing to him about that, but I was kind of anxious to get finished up digging for the day. Time was dragging although. And the one digging next to me this time, Fred Johnston, he said he was, he smoked a pipe all the time. It smelled pretty good when it was going, but it never stayed going very long. So he'd stand there packing the tobacco down with his finger, then light it again and puff away, in between the words he was trying to say. And now it's a good thing I don't light up easy like, lest he burns his finger, I was thinking. Then his pipe, it would go out again. And all this put a notion in my head to start smoking a pipe. 'Cause this fellow, he never get in a hurry, and he might live along longer than me, doing things in a hurry like. I heard people say that. But if you never gets into a habit, you never have no trouble getting out of it. So I had to forget about the notion of smoking. And at last, it comes time for me to pick up and make for home. I had to walk although, and I was kind of tired. I was hoping the missus had some of the chores done up, so that I'd have more time to get dressed up for digging again tomorrow. And the weather, it was getting warmer now, and those pesky mosquitoes and black flies are out again. All summer now we has to keep a smuds going at night, and the animals lays around it and gets right into the smoke to keep them off. At the daytime, though, they can rub on the bushes and keep them off. And when they does that, they makes a fine path following Indian style, one behind the t'other. Lots of times I uses these paths to go to where the cows are to fetch some home for milking. The best thing for making a smoke is cow pies. Start them going and they burn slow all night like, same as peat when they gets dry. They're laying all around the cow yard where you can get them easy like. Big cow pies. And when these stinging creatures gets real thick, you gotta make a smudge, lest the cattle gets restless and their milk drops off to nothing. And besides, they call all night and never sleep. And when my neighbor's bull hears them, he gets to boggling too. Then nobody can't sleep no more. So when I come home to the yard, I see the cattle all around in the yard and the gate's closed up. One look at them and I could tell the missus had been doing the milking already. And when you're milking cows, it's better if you do it the same time by the clock. Every time you do it. That's the way they let down more milk, but be sure to strip them good. If you leave milk in any cow's bag, she'll dry up in no time. That's what the calves does when they suck them. They gets full up and they don't take it all. Then the cow thinks he don't want no more, so she quits making it. And if you pull out the last drop every time that way, she gets fooled and keeps making it inside her. And up until the time she has her next calf pretty near. That's the missus's job, stripping, after I do the milking. And this time, he done it all by himself. But when I gets to the house, I said about lighting a smoke for animals tonight. Get the oxen in with them too so they can get smoked up. Get letting your fire get away from you. Watch out for the sparks, he says, getting into the grass with the wind. Else you might start a fire nobody can't stop. Oh, I don't want none of them things, I told her. I see too much of that kind of fire already. Some I see travel faster than a man can run when the wind gets hold of it. People had to get out of their way in a hurry for it could caught them up and stop and make a backfire around them, else they might get burned up when they got no place to run to. And if they want to save their buildings, they got to backfire too, so as when the fires meet that way, they can't go no place, because there's nothing left for them to burn, like. And beating it with something wet that way, and you might even drop dead even. It gets hot around. I cover my smudge with wet pies after I light it to keep the sparks from flying around. I told her that to make her feel better. At our supper, I told about going up to the wedding and see Victoria same time. If I go or not is the same difference to miss, he says. I've got my garden to put in, and you should be thinking about doing your plowing and seeding, he says. Still, he says it's the last chance we're going to get to see her and the kids this summer. And how are you going to go up now? I'd like to know, she says. Oh, I said I was thinking to ride over to Prince's place and see if I could use his boat. He can mind my team till I come back again. Or maybe some other people's going up and they can ride with them. Some of those boats I see tied along the bank when I come by there are big ones and hold lots of people, and we could take turns rowing, maybe, or put up a sail, maybe. Well, that sounds pretty good, she says. There's only one thing, although, she says. If I had more time, I might have had my new dress finished to wear it now. I guess I'll have to stay up all night and finish it up. You can do up all the chores yourself in the morning, else I'll be too tired from staying up late like that. When he said that, I knowed he had his mind made up to go. All I had to do now was to get a message over to Prince's place about oozing his bought was a fella what comes from out same way as Prince lives. He digs alongside of me, and that's when he told me where he come from. I went to bed first, but I never went to sleep right away. I was laying there thinking when she calls up to me to come down and take a look-see at her new dress to see if it fitted her better every place. Drop it down a little more, I told her. If you have any left turned up inside the bottom, and the collar at your neck, make it stand up good and high. Then you can say it's finished right. You may as well as say. Well, do you like it then, Peter says. Sure, I says. It wouldn't look so good on nobody, same as it looks like when you get it on, I says. Now can I go back to bed, I says. I can't remember her coming up this time. I must have been hard on not to hear her coming upstairs, anyhow. So the settler has one more day to put in digging before he goes to the wedding. And so he needed a good sleep. But early next morning, he was up again with the sun, just as usual. Now, early next morning, he was still sleeping when I went down. And I noticed the new dress hanging up, all finished up like. Then I knowed right away I have no more trouble about going up after seeing that hanging there. Now, one more day I worked there digging at this ditch, and somebody began calling it the whiskey ditch after we heard how it come about people was wanted that dug. It wasn't near finished when I put in my third day, but other fellas was coming in to keep going till it got to the end where it was going, draining water into the south marshes. And on this day I got my message about the team stopping at Prince's place. He said they could run in his pasture while he was away, and there's a water hole handy, and there'd be no bother. He said I could ooze his boat and welcome, but it's a little cranky, although he says. If I knowed how to handle a boat, I'd be welcome to take it. But this fella, Harry, says that's what Prince told him when he said that to him. So all I had to do now was to see my neighbor Dempsey now if he could do my chores up till he gets back. I could do that on my way home, I was thinking. And after I'd done my digging that day, I had my taxes paid up for this year anyway. And I had in my pocket a paper saying that. And Dempsey was glad to help me out. He says, after what I'd done for him different times. All right, then I says, you can come over in time to do up everything in the evening, I told him. But I can do my morning chores myself. Then I sat down to tell him how I wanted things done. Not to forget to tell him about putting the milk down the whale and about feeding my spotted calf the right way. And his missus poured us a cup of tea just now while we were talking. And I tried some of her kind of bannock, and it tasted pretty good, but a bit different from Aunt Jennick's bannock, and a different again from what I get at home again. Everybody's bannock always is not the same. They must be got a different way of punching it around, must be. I left Dempsey's place and I hurried home to get ready for leaving early in the morning. And my gate wasn't shut very tight, I noticed. Those boys must have been over for water again, I was thinking. I wonder if they're going to learn to put on the latch proper. Now, it's the same as I was saying afore about the house being hot. It was hot again, this time. I had to stay in but to help the missus out while she watched her cooking, not to let it burn like. She was cooking stuff for the wedding to take up. Everybody does that when they go or not. That's one place where there's always a lot to eat ready, and you can take all you want anytime you want it. Our supper was on top the cairn stove in the front room, keeping it warmer up. This is why he wanted me to watch it, not to let it burn. And she was oozing my seasoned wood I cut last winter. I had it split and piled so that the wind can dry it out like, and this is why it was so hot in there. Using that stuff, it's better than dead wood you can pick up in the bush. I had it piled near the door, handy like, and she could step out and get a few billets to use special like. Everything's coming along fine, he says, but me, I'm too hot already and wishing I could get out of it. Just then, she says, the cooking's out now, and we both puts the stuff on the table. I was expecting to come right out, but now I'm late starting my chores again. So I bolts down my supper and I takes off for the stable before darkness comes, else I might have to use a lantern. There's one job I got to do extra this time. My new yoke I've been making for the oxen, I need to finish it up, and it took a lot of chipping to get it shaped and upright, and it's a little rough in the hollow place what goes at top of their necks. And I was thinking I could put a piece of hide on that part so as not to rub them like. Saves me polishing it up. Yes, now. In the middle I had a piece of hardwood tacked on to give it strength like. 'Cause I see a team once that drawed so hard the yokes separated in the middle and spring back and pretty near took the driver off his seat, so it did. And if that happens to us over there, we would find ourselves riding on the oxen in place of riding on the cart. When I come in this time, the missus is still busy doing things, so on and so forth, so to speak. So I gives her a hand to help him out. He wanted to lay out everything so as when morning come, I wouldn't have to go looking around for nothing, and so wanted to take along. And two things she dasn't forget is the stuff she cooked for eating at the wedding, and the present for the ones getting married up. She saved out our bed lunch along with our tea, so we eat that and went up. We were both pretty tired out this time, so both of us were dead to the world as soon as we hit our pillows.